everyone, and welcome to another Zoom Into Books presentation sponsored by Headline Books. Today we are chatting with award-winning author Tom Conway, who's going to be talking with us about his book, The Naughty List. And as you can see from his background, he is definitely right on with our theme of Christmas in July that we've been celebrating all month. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce you to Tom Conway. Thanks so much for being with us today, Tom.
Thanks for having me. I'm going to go ahead and start my screen share now.
Great.
So I'm talking today about The Naughty List. This is a book I wrote about 5 years ago and had the idea in my head about 10 years before that. Before I'd written the book, I told the kids the story a few times in short tales, and based on their feedback, finally, in 2015, I put pen to paper, so they say, and typed out the full manuscript. Did it around this time of year, actually. Read it to them each night, and then really finalized it on a second reading towards the holidays. I will say editing took a few years, as I didn't leave my day job, so it was a work of love. But finally, in November of 2019, I published the book. It's been in circulation since then. I'm very happy to have won the Indie Book Award for ebook fiction. It exceeded any expectation I had for the book. And to be honest, I'm not an aspiring writer. An author is not a career choice that I've decided to make, but the story was bouncing around in my head, and I just had to get pen to paper, get it out there, and so here it is today. I also will have an audio book coming out in a few weeks. I have a local person I know. He's going to narrate the book for me. So please stay tuned, and I'll make an announcement when that comes out. So The Naughty List is, it's a Christmas tale. It's a lengthy book. It's about a little over 300 pages, and it's made for a young adult audience. Aggressive readers as young as 8 could get into the book. And really its sweet spot is kids in the age of 10 to 16. And of course, anyone who loves Christmas will enjoy the book. The Naughty List focuses on a group of kids. So Santa gets kidnapped by a toy company, and the elves at the North Pole are just too innocent to really know what to do. This is not their type of activity. So at a loss for how to get Santa Claus back, they turn to the Naughty List to recruit kids that they think can fulfill the job. And they start with number 1 on the Naughty List, Tiberius. Tiberius then is brought to the North Pole. He recruits other kids from the Naughty List based on their skill sets, their naughty reason, and their talent for all things winter and Christmas, to bring them in and form a team to go get Santa Claus. Along the way, they learn a lot about each other, and one of the themes, the biggest theme of the book, is that the way we label people and judge them probably needs a second look at this point. So kids are normally, their behavior spans the gamut of from good to bad, but a few bad actions should not land you on a naughty list. And that's really the theme of the book, how each of these kids on the list finds their good side, it's brought out in them, and their lives are changed by the experience. It's a bit of a hero journey as well. But to really, today what I wanted to talk about first was a little bit of the history. It was a surprise to me. The story was always in my mind, but when I researched Christmas, I really just connected it with the traditional Christian sense of the holiday. And as I did research on this, I discovered that Christmas is much older and much more open to other religions, and really it crosses all cultures. The midwinter celebration is there for everyone. That was one of the more surprising aspects of the research when I did the Naughty List. So I'd like to focus on that today, and we'll go over a few other things that relate to the book. One moment, and I'll get to change my slide here. So we'll talk about some winter traditions. We'll start with the origins of solstice and midwinter celebrations. These are really the precursors of Christmas. And then we'll talk about how Christmas came onto the scene and has since dominated the season. We'll look at a few Christmas traditions from around the world. The Naughty List incorporates traditions from Austria, Japan, South America, Hawaii, Just all sorts of odd things that you'll find out there. Traditions like in Brazil, Santa comes in on a helicopter, and in Hawaii, he rides a canoe. So definitely a lot of different traditions around the world. We'll talk about some of the newest traditions that have been created by modern media, specifically TV and movies. The naughty list will appeal to kids that are into technology and want to really know how some of the things behind Christmas traditions could work. So I'll cover that a little bit in my presentation. I'll go through the characters. And then last, we do live in a new normal, as I keep hearing. And I'll talk a little bit about how naughty lists, the lessons in the book and the book itself can help us should we have to quarantine this Christmas time. So first, the origins of the midwinter celebrations. They really, when I started that research, it goes back to the beginning of recorded time. Pretty much any human civilization, when they did not understand the cycle of the earth around the sun as we do today, it seemed that when the sun was going away, they weren't sure it would come back. So they did certain things, certain celebrations. A lot of the world turning upside down type actions were included in their celebrations. And these were really born out of that necessity and superstition. Now, the necessity side of it is you raise your animals and your crops all year long. And then when you get into winter, you have a surplus of food and animals, but you really have no way to store it all. So they would dry as much food and preserve it, but this abundance of food made it easy to have a celebration, and it made it not seem wasteful, because if you didn't consume the food, it was going to go just rot and be useless. So this helps people with a midwinter celebration. And then, of course, sacrifices to the gods. Early on in human history, that was very prevalent, and the midwinter was the scariest time. So the sun was receding, and they thought a sacrifice would be made to bring it back, to bring back the growing season, the warmth, and the animals. Christmas was also, Christmas was created to allow people to celebrate in their usual way. So the Romans had their celebrations, and when Constantine took over Rome and wanted to Christianize Rome, the people weren't so quick to give up their celebrations. At that point, Christmas was not celebrated. The birth of Christ was just not an event that got much attention. So we'll get into a little bit of how the Roman civilization took their holidays and basically put it in a new clothing to be attractive to Christians, yet allow the existing Romans to keep their celebrations. People do not give up their celebrations easily. So first, the winter solstice. What is it? We all experience it, but it's just a function now of the Earth's axis being rotated at 23 degrees. So around December 21st, the Earth is, for the northern hemisphere, furthest from the sun, and that's where we get the dark times. Ancient cultures, again, they believed the sun needed to be helped back. And then something that brings out the Christmas light is really, it's black is the color of Christmas. And I read that in a few different places. It's the darkness that allows us to bring our own light and have our own light shine. Whereas other times of the years we have the sun and we have long days. It's Christmas time where human ingenuity is allowed to shine. And it is that darkness that gives us the palette to shine against. So if we go back to one of the first real end of year celebrations, at least in the Western hemisphere, it's Zagmuk. And it's a Babylonian celebration that was really across most of Mesopotamia about 3,000 to 4,000 years ago. So what you had there was before the religion came, and for them, this would have been the old times. It was a world of chaos. It was a world of chaos ruled by Tiamat. Tiamat would, he eventually got destroyed or put away by Marduk, and Marduk was the sun god. So Marduk came and brought us to the nice year that we know, but every year at the end, as the sun was marching south, it looked like Tiamat would win a battle. So the Babylonians created a 12-day celebration to battle Tiamat, to prop up Marduk. They would bring in all their gods. This was a polytheist society, and they would bring in all their gods from different places. They bring them in on boats, put them up in front of the temple to help Marduk defeat Tiamat. And this celebration was called Zagmuk. The 12 days interesting. It goes right up till today with the 12 days of Christmas. The origin of that is believed to be the difference between the solar and lunar calendars. And then later on, you get into Saturnalia. Now, this is a Roman celebration. Rome was founded around 750 BCE. So there was another polytheistic society. And Saturnalia honored Saturn, the god of harvest. So again, the sun is going away. They need a celebration to bring back the harvest so that the seed would grow next spring. This is really the holiday that is most directly translated into Christmas. A lot of the things that we see in Roman culture at the time and today are very similar, such as "Slave is your master." That's common in one of the Christmas songs. That was commonplace in Rome back then. So for the day of Saturnalia, it was actually a season, but during one of the days, the Roman slaves would be served by their masters. It was a society basically inverted. In some villages, they'd actually have mock kings. Usually a slave would be a king for the day and would be able to rule. They also had some of the same problems popping up in Roman times that we have today around the holiday season. And this is one of my favorite quotes. It's from a Greek living in the Roman society, Libanius. "The impulse to spend seizes everyone. He who the whole year through is taking pleasure in saving and piling up his money becomes suddenly extravagant." Very similar to today's winter celebration, Christmas. I do want to mention Yule. It's another celebration, another European celebration that we get a lot of our Christmas traditions from. One of the big ones for them is the Yule log. In some areas, it would be a giant log, like the trunk of a tree that would be meant to burn for days. There's many other traditions that center around the log, even one in Italy where the kids would bang the log and supposedly the sparks would turn into gifts for them. The Germans had their own myths. This one's very similar to one of the main characters in my book, that on the night of winter solstice, the great god Wotan rode through the skies on a white stallion, showering rewards on the good and punishing the bad. That is definitely a big theme in the Yule celebration. You had the fertility sprite named Freya. She livened things up by entering homes on the smoke from the hearth fire. Smoke's another theme throughout different Christmas traditions. In England, they believe that you write a letter to Santa and then you burn it in your fireplace and the smoke will carry it there. Knecht Ruprecht has actually made some appearances lately in modern culture as a sort of dark character. And that's similar to one of his many names that he had back then, but he was. In some cultures, most prevalently, Knecht Ruprecht would follow Santa around. And while Santa gave gifts to the good girls and boys, Knecht Ruprecht would actually, he would thrash him in some stories. So he was not a good character. He was there to punish the kids. One of the biggest Yule gods to really resemble Santa Claus, and this is a good illustration of that, was the Norse god Odin. And he governed over the end of the year. So he sped around the world by night on Sleipnir, a great white horse with 8 legs for greater speed. He wore a magic cloak. He had a broad-brimmed hat. He carried a sack that he could spread goodness with. And when he's walking, he's portrayed as a wise old man with a long white beard carrying a wanderer's staff. Does somewhat resemble a big Christmas guy that we celebrate this time of year. Lastly, I do want to talk about Mithraism. This is a really somewhat of an obscure religion, but it was a religion taking hold in Rome around the time of Christianity taking hold. The key with Mithraism is it was already getting entrenched in the Roman world before Christianity. We could spend some time, we won't, but long story short, Mithraism really died out. It was a male-only religion. So right off the bat, they were at a handicap because they only had half the population eligible to join. Mithraism, relics of the religion are seen in Rome to this day, and it pretty much died out as Rome went to its Christianity phase in 300 or 400 AD. But you see some similarities here on the slide. Mithra was born on Christmas Day. He came from a rock, which has nothing to do with today, but it was that sort of divine beginning. They call that day the Day of the Invincible Sun, S-U-N, and now we kind of celebrate the sun, S-O-N. So it's very, again, another parallel. And Mithraism had some commonalities with Christianism. You gathered together periodically to share your meals. You actually got baptized in water, and after death, you had an immortality waiting for you. But again, its disadvantage was that it was only practiced by men. So as the Roman world turned to Christianity, the pagan rituals, just the people weren't going to let them go. Saturnalia was a wild, raucous holiday that the people looked forward to all year. So they sort of took this holiday and they took a Christian meaning for it, and they said, you know, we can make this a celebration of Christ. We'll call it his birthday, and that's directly from Mithraism. And we'll celebrate it, and we'll get rid of the pagan roots, but keep the celebrations going. So slowly Christmas took over. It's the aspects of it, decorating trees, giving gifts, parties. They came from other celebrations, but they were quickly brought into the sphere of Christmas celebrations. So they held on, the different cultures as they went over to Christianity still held on to their midwinter traditions, but they took on a Christian meaning. So things that we take for granted that we think have a Christian root were actually originally pagan celebrations that have since been changed. Can't get out of history without talking about St. Nicholas. That is really the patron saint of children and of sailors and many others. And it's what St. Nick is what is referring to when we talk about Santa and call him St. Nick. It's St. Nicholas, the real saint that they refer to. Again, another person who would leave coins behind as secret presents for people. He might put them in their shoes. Santa Claus, it was a Dutch tradition, and he came from St. Nicholas, which they pronounce Sinterklaas, which becomes Santa Claus. Except the St. Nicholas celebrations, they're still held in different places around the world. They're usually on December 6th. And then you have our American Santa Claus, really a more recent invention. It doesn't go back very far in history. You start seeing elements of Santa Claus appearing in the late 1700s and early 1800s. But it was definitely Clement Seymour's A Night Before Christmas that made Santa Claus the plump and jolly fellow we know today. It's that story that gave us the reindeer, cemented the idea of coming down the chimney. None of those ideas were new and out of itself, but he put Mr. Moore put a definite American spin on it and created the icon we all know and love today. So a couple of modern Christmas traditions that still survive, and some of these we use in the book. A fascinating one is in Pennsylvania, the Moravian descendants believe that a child born on Christmas Eve can speak and understand the language of animals. This is key in the book, as one of our characters can do that throughout the whole Christmas season. Besides just speaking the animal language, Moravians were very in tune with their animals. They would give them a Christmas morning dew if they could get that into their dishes, and they'd also leave out stalks and seed for the passing birds. The ringing of the bells that we love, that's just a very old tradition of scaring away evil spirits. In Sweden, St. Lucia is a bringer of light. She's part of their Christmas tradition and brings presents as well. The nativity scene that we love and look at, that's brought to us by St. Francis. The Christmas tree tradition has been around in Europe with Germany and their traditions for a long time, but it was really Queen Victoria that made it popular across the world. And luckily for us, we don't have to light our trees with candles anymore. Our electric light bulbs are a lot safer than what they put up back then. And then there's some very odd traditions, of course, around the world. One of my favorite, and I explain it a little bit in the book, is in Japan, after World War II, with the American cultural explosion that went on in Japan. One of their traditions in certain areas is to go to KFC for your Christmas or Christmas Eve meal. And they actually get some pretty long lines. They bulk up the staff and order a lot of extra chicken. So KFC is a Christmas tradition out there. Popular media, of course, has given us a lot of the traditions we like today. My favorite in my family is Rudolph. Rudolph gives us, in my book, one of the lead characters, Hermey, is based on the elf in Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer that did not fit in very well. Santa's Naughty List, the Elf on the Shelf, a very recent story. I think that's in the last 20 years. These are meant to keep kids on their best behavior. You start with the naughty list, you don't want to land on it, and then the elf on the shelf becomes somewhat of a proxy for information for Santa, that keeping an eye on those kids. Christmas lights today, you know, they're brighter and they're in more places, and that's thanks to the energy efficient bulbs, and really you can go all the way back to electricity. But Christmas continues to evolve. One of the quotes I came across in my research was that all modifications of tradition demonstrate that the whole occasion is not a dead force of habit, but a lively and even creative force. This was an empowering quote for me. It allowed me to take the Christmas holiday that we see today and add a few new twists to it. It doesn't all need to be this static, dead habit. Christmas needs to be kept alive. It needs to be the jumping flames of a fire, constantly changing it to keep our attention. We don't want it to just become a monolith that we all worship without ever changing. Another part that I had to research for the book was figuring out ways to incorporate winter technology into it. For my young adult audience, they're into science. A lot of kids like to understand the reason why things happen. So I came across different technologies that are winter related that can help explain some of the phenomena that we see in popular culture. So we'll have these kids combining some of those new technologies with old traditions to solve their problems. We meld that together, but not all technology is good. I think there's technology that can bring us together. I think during the last couple of months, we saw how this platform that I'm currently on has really allowed people to continue to communicate. It's broke down barriers of loneliness and desolation and allowed us to still connect in a meaningful way. And while we all hope that this current situation improves quickly and drastically, its technology is allowing us to at least stay connected as a society. And it's got its positives and negatives to it, and Naughty List does cover some of that. One of the products I've been fascinated with for a long time. I'm a bit of a history buff, if you haven't noticed already. But in World War II, a fascinating idea they had was to build a ship out of ice. And they couldn't figure out how to do it. Ships were melting, and then they experimented with mixtures of sawdust in water and froze it, and they came up with a substance called pykrete. And this is an actual substance that is featured in my book, and if you look it up, it has a very interesting history. You can see in the slide some of the details on it, but one of the funniest things on it, and it's in my last bullet point, is one of the generals or a lieutenant did not believe how strong the substance was, actually fired a bullet at it. Well, that was a mistake. Luckily, it missed him. Snowmen, we all love snowmen. We love talking snowmen. This is an image of snowmen from a video game, and then on the right is a super close-in image of a snowflake. So in the Naughty List, we discover and come up with a theory on how snowmen become alive, and it comes down to a dust particle at the core. So in our book, we explore what that dust particle can be and how it can result in living snowmen. We even explore in the book lightly about different methods of conductivity of metals and a way to make a snowman bigger or smaller, or how exactly that works, why you can't make a giant snowman or a mini one, and everything in between. So we go into that, as well as creating snowmen. Are you able to create a snowflake on your own? So that tech is combined with traditions, and it results in elves using some of the latest surveillance to monitor the world's children. I've just mentioned that conductivity of metals. We talk about the origins of reindeer. Reindeer, in my book, have one possible explanation of where they come from, although there are others. And even social media gets a nod in my book. It's a powerful force, and we're on it right now. So I hope it does work in all the ways we want it to without the negatives. So now I'm going to just pivot away from that history and get a little bit into the book itself and just go over some of the main characters. First, you'll see listed the kids. All but the last one, Nebo, were on the Naughty List and recruited for this purpose. And I'm only going to highlight 3 adults here. There's a few more in the book, but the kids really take the stage. These are the 3 adults that help out. So first is our main character, Tiberius Kringle. He goes by the nickname Ty. He's just your average, rich, spoiled adolescent boy who's very cocky and gets into trouble quite a bit. He's not really raised very well, and he ends up as #1 on the naughty list. And his grandfather is Hermey, which is the elf from Rudolph I had mentioned earlier. So being #1 on the naughty list does not sit well with Hermey, but it does get him up to the North Pole first, and he's the one that needs to put together a team to rescue Santa. Then there's Augustus Rauch. I just have him listed as Gus. That's his popular name. He's the Moravian boy who's able to communicate with animals. He's a very quiet, introverted boy. He lives with his mother alone on a farm. A very religious boy as well. So Gus is one of the characters that will pretty much want to keep Christ in Christmas during the book. It's really his focus, and so he plays that part when they have a debate about the true meaning of Christmas and whether or not Christmas can expand to where Gus considers it as a purely Christian holiday, to really incorporate all religions and peoples of the world, all cultures of the world. Gus is also one of the few kids who rejects technology. He does prefer to spend time with his animals. Mithra Bentley, if you may, both her names have significance. A lot of characters do. Mithra is the god that we were referencing that came before Christ in the Roman world, the god that sprang from a rock on Christmas Day. Well, Mithra is a young woman from Vermont. She's in her early teens, or right around 12, 13, and she's descended from Snowflake Bentley. Snowflake is very famous up in Vermont, outside of Mansfield. He was the first one to really photograph a snowflake and its beauty. He really appreciated how every snowflake was unique and brought its own unique beauty. He would have the snowflakes land on a little piece of black felt and then photograph them. So I really like him from history, and Mithra is a bit of a nod in his direction. Now, being in Vermont and photographing snowflakes, she's also an expert in winter weather, and she's very confident. I wouldn't say cocky. She has a quiet confidence that helps her get through her problems. And she's really key to understanding and harnessing the winter environment. Tomo Gozen is from Japan. She's a world-class climber. Even though she's a champion athlete who really could win at any sport on her own, Tomo has a tendency to cheat. She runs from failure, so she'll do anything she can to make sure she wins. Her sister Kiso is a smaller part of the book. She's not on the naughty team, but she is a huge fan of Santa and really gives Tomo her desire and passion to save the holiday. And we'll move on to Ben David. Ben David is our general. He's our young general who comes from an Israeli military academy. He is a Jewish kid, so he does give some diversity to the group. He's friendly with Nicola Abdu. Nicola is a real-life person. He's considered the Santa of the Middle East. So he's been, for years now, going around to places in Palestine, the Middle East, Israel, Jordan, spreading the joy of Christmas as best he can. It's a tough place for him to operate in, but he soldiers on, and so I give him a spot in the book, and he's pretty much the man who brings Ben David up to the team. Ben, of course, being a military kid, is in great shape. Josef Ruprecht, on the other hand, is the exact opposite. Joseph is a large boy, rarely leaves his room. His room you could consider a computer heaven with servers. He's excellent at online games, and he's completely spoiled by his parents. He does get bullied by his peers when he goes out, although that's not a big theme in the story. But Joseph is raised in a village in Austria where the Silent Night Chapel is located. That's where the song Silent Night was first written. Joseph's real specialty in helping out the team is harnessing today's technology. Nebo is a little more mysterious than all the others. He sort of just shows up to the team in the middle of the book. He's not necessarily a recruit. He does have incredible strength. He's very quiet, but he ties in the ancient aspect of Christmas. Nebo comes from the celebration of Zagmuk, and he's a pacifist. So he plays an interesting role in the book. It's a little bit mysterious, but he is still a child and joins with the rest of the team. Now we'll get to the three adults that I wanted to highlight. First is Hermey Kringle. Really, he ties the book into the American Christmas as we know it today, a descendant of the book by Clement C. Moore, and then Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, even up to today's more popular movies like Elf, The Santa Claus, and others. But Hermey, he's the dentist elf. So in my book, he's a bit older now. It's kind of in time with his what he would have been back then. He's a grandfather. His son actually works for the toy company that has kidnapped Santa, although he's not involved in the kidnapping. And it's Hermey who wants to introduce Tiberius to Santa Claus to shake him out of his spoiled funk, and ends up a lot more involved than he wants to be, but he handles it very well. Ziggy is the head elf. So Ziggy's the one who works with the kids most closely. He's a bit of a gruff character. He's not thrilled by the idea of working with the naughty list. Let's put it that way. It's a little nerve-wracking to him, as a matter of fact. But once you get past his gruff exterior, he's soft and mushy on the inside, and he really works with the kids and Mrs. Claus to help the kids save the holiday. Mrs. Claus, I highlight her here as opposed to Mr. Claus because he's kidnapped for most of the book. Mrs. Claus, on the other hand, is a very strong character, and this is where I diverge a little bit from modern culture. She's a strong woman who thinks for herself, takes quick decision, and doesn't hesitate for a moment to tell one of the kids if they're out of line and bring them right back into line. So she does act like their mother while they're up at the North Pole, but a very stern mother and more of a mission commander in a way. And Mrs. Claus has been around the North Pole for a long, long time, so her experience is invaluable to the team. So that's pretty much for an overview of the characters in the book, and I'll do that in lieu of reading the book. If you'd like to hear a few chapters of the book read, you're just going to have to wait a few weeks till I get the audiobook production, and I'll get some samples out there. I did want to mention this last section here. It's Christmas in quarantine. I hope it doesn't come to pass, but I think we should all be prepared if it does. And a theme running throughout my book is dropping the commercialism of the holiday and picking up the real traditions of it, the things that matter. Oftentimes, it's not the fancy table settings, the wonderful ornate meals, the fancy presents that we remember years after Christmas. The Christmas memories we have from the past are more about sometimes if something went wrong and how we overcame it, or a tender moment between a child and parent. It could be perhaps the budding of a new relationship, but often we spend so much time trying to make Christmas a perfect holiday that we forget what's really at the root and what makes our memories. So I wanted to highlight just one aspect of what I think can make Christmas in these challenging times and help redefine it for us and bring us back to the roots of Christmas. And that's Hygge. Hygge is a Danish specialty, a Scandinavian tradition. It's really a lifestyle that they live with. And let me get to our next slide here. So back to Hygge real quick. It's really a lifestyle where you pause, you step out of the rush of your mad life, and you just take a moment to appreciate what you have around you, to not just mindlessly snack on something, but to really enjoy each bite, each sip of your libation, to appreciate the cold outside, as opposed to just be complaining about shoveling the snow. Appreciate that it gives a quietness to your neighborhood. And that new fallen snow is as bright as anything. If you've ever seen, it's from Clement C. Moore's book, but if you've ever seen the new fallen snow on a moonlit night, it is as bright as day out there, or at least it seems to be. So that's Hygge for you. And that's a theme that gets carried through the naughty list, is rejecting those fancy things and getting back to the basics of the holiday. So to have a Hyggely Christmas is a Scandinavian thing, and this is not my book, but it's a book that really, I read it after I wrote the naughty list and thought how well it fit into one of my themes there. It's a book I do recommend going into this Christmas. It's a short read. In it, you will find out real quickly how to make adjustments in your life to really just appreciate the small moments as opposed to letting them pass by unnoticed. So let's get our Christmas Hygge on. It's about spending time with your closest friends and family in intimate settings. So we may be forced to do that, but that may not necessarily be a bad thing. If we're forced to ditch the giant office party, or whatever the big parties are, you can still have your close friends and family with you, whether they're in person or virtually on a Zoom session. But the key to getting hygge in your home is to create a warm and inviting living space. So you may start that by stoking a fire, or if, like me, you don't have a fireplace, I use electric candles to create a warm atmosphere. You're certainly welcome to use real candles, but I use the electric ones. I just don't have the smoke that gives off on them, but they do have that warm orange light. So it brings down that, really sets the mood in the house, that soft light. Allowing the food, we've been cooking a lot more indoors as a society with the closing. And if you let some of that food smell linger in your house, in the winter time especially, it can give an extra scent to the home, make it feel more homey. You can play soft, relaxing Christmas music, whatever your flavor is. And a part of hygge is getting very comfortable. So you want to surround yourself with pillows, blankets, sort of snuggle on in there, or if you're like me, just get comfortable and warm and use them to sit up. Another thing is that don't be trapped inside. There's something to be said about the contrast of the cold versus the warmth of the inside. And sometimes a walk on a winter's day will give you that contrast. You'll go outside, you'll feel the chill, and then appreciate the inside even more. And then, of course, there's savoring each bite of your food. We can easily sit in front of a TV or our phone and mindlessly gobble down a bag of food. But the hygge tradition will tell you, bake your food, eat your food, and savor the bites, as opposed to just gnawing on it while you're being distracted. So some Hyggely preparations for this year is, so hygge is not the rejection of things that are bad for you. It's a philosophy to embrace those things. So if you're gonna have a beer, or you're gonna have a couple of cookies, it's not about rejecting those, but appreciate what you're eating. Understand that these are treats, and then you will enjoy them, and if you're focused on it, you'll get more enjoyment out of it. Part of hygge says if you make a cookie, you'll taste the love you baked into them when you eat them. And then the last thing for a perfectly Hyggely Christmas is to curl up with your new favorite Christmas book, The Naughty List, and read it out loud to your family. So that's pretty much my presentation today. I hope I didn't take up too much time.